Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Twisted Talks. I'm Josh.
I'm Tanya.
And so yeah, as you may have noticed, there was no episode last week. Because we were super organised and recorded like I don't know, a shit ton of episodes.
15 or 16 episodes.
Imagine, I wish we'd had
No,
that
it
many
was what?
recorded.
It was like
six, 5 or 6.
No, it was
five.
definitely more than that.
No, because
Josh.
it was one per week before I was gone, which was 4, and then the
Yeah.
week I got back, we had one recorded for. So 5.
Oh, so we still have some in the bank?
No, we've none in the bank. We used all 5. We
Yeah,
only
but
had 5 recorded.
we were recording like 3 a week there for like a month straight.
No, we were supposed to, but we didn't record 3 a week. We only did that for like 2 weeks.
Oh.
And that was, we were also recording in advance, so we had the weeks before I left to post as well.
Oh, okay. So so we were organised.
We were organised for 5 weeks to cover the week I was back as well. But jet lag did not agree. Yeah, it was a lot worse coming home than it was going over. It was practically non-existent going over. But yeah, did I want to come home from America? No. Did I cry? Yes. But look, we live, we learn. I'm here in Mitchellstown, so happy, yay.
Happy to be home.
But yeah, so on that note, apologies for the gap week, but to be fair, we've only missed a week like once before, and I had COVID, so, you know.
But the first
I couldn't
time.
speak.
He didn't have COVID coming back from America.
No.
He had COVID the first time we missed an episode.
No, COVID the first time we missed an episode, so, you know.
So
That's fine. But welcome back. And this week we are covering a case. Because that's what we do. Yeah. We cover cases.
We do.
And Tanya, take it away because I'm babbling. Please.
Okay.
Please take it away.
So today we are going to tell you a little bit. Sorry. So today we are going to tell you a little bit about a murder, which is fairly standard for us. Trigger warnings for murder, sexual assault, and there are also some minors involved, so if you don't want to listen to this one, no worries, off you go. Grand.
The N-word as well.
Yes. Necrophilia.
Yeah,
there's a bit of necrophilia. Yuck. Now the topic of our Twisted Talk this week is one Gary Ridgway, aka the Green River Killer. So let's start off with his early years. So Gary Leon Ridgway was born on February 18th, 1949, in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is one of the places Josh visited.
Yes, you know, we didn't long cover Ted Bundy before I went,
yeah.
and then we decided to cover this before I went. So apparently I just felt like going to places where killers had been, even though I did absolutely nothing to do a crime over there. And I don't mean that in a committing crime way. I mean that in a going to sites of.
He went on a spree.
Of relevance.
A shopping spree.
Yeah.
So Gary was born to Mary Rita Steinman and Thomas Newton Ridgway. He has 2 brothers, Greg and Tom. I'm not too sure on where he falls in the order, but I do think his brothers are older than him. When Gary was young, his family moved frequently between Utah and Idaho before they finally settled down in King County, Washington in 1958.
Idaho?
Did I say Idaho?
No, you did say Idaho.
Idaho.
So I said Idaho.
I is Idaho. So they settled down in Washington in 1958 in an area that is now known as SeaTac.
That sounds like an IT company.
Yeah, SeaTac, for all your IT needs. Gary's family were described as poor. His father worked driving trucks whenever he was able, and his mother raised the children in their small house near the Pacific Highway. According to some sources, his mother also worked as a sale clerk. It's said that Thomas, his father, would often complain about prostitutes, and one of Gary's wives would later say that Mary wore tight clothes, excessive makeup, and, quote, looked like a prostitute. So,
you know,
do with that what you will.
I hate them. I want to be with someone who dresses like one, but they don't do it.
Yeah. I like the look. I like the aesthetic.
It's giving he either really
Hypocrisy.
wanted to sleep with prostitutes or he was sleeping with prostitutes.
Yeah, it's just giving straight up hypocrisy.
Yeah, it's like when someone hates gays and then it's like they bully someone and then they come out years later and they just
self-hating gay.
Yeah, like it's just like 5 years later and you find out they have a big cock. OnlyFans, that you? Oh my god, I thought you were homophobic.
So, the 3 boys, slept in bunk beds and spent most of their time outdoors, exploring and playing, and when their father would come home after being away driving trucks, they would beg him to take them out into the woods and cook breakfast on an open fire.
Mary's got the fishnets on again, get us out of here.
Their mother
Mary, the one with the fishnets.
Mary of the fishnets, has been described by Ridgway's second wife as a, quote, strong woman who completely dominated her husband, and when he was a child, Gary witnessed a lot of arguments and violence between his mother and father. With one instance, he saw his mother break a plate over his father's head at the dinner table. He must have said a snide remark about her fishnets. Ridgway would later tell investigators that he had a bedwetting problem until he was 13, and that each time he would have an accident...
I saw that.
So each time that he would have an accident, his mother would immediately wash his genitals, and this is something that she did right up until the bedwetting stopped at the age of 13. In addition to this, Mary would also belittle and embarrass Gary about his accidents in front of his other family members. And according to the Seattle Times, Gary had conflicting feelings of sexual attraction to his mother. He told doctors that these feelings fluctuated between lust and humiliation, and these feelings also led him to have murderous thoughts about his mother. Now, Gary's IQ was tested as a child, and he was found to have an IQ of 82, which is apparently considered low. I haven't a notion about IQs. Don't
I know
don't
what
at me, please.
mine is in. We spoke about this before in another episode
Yeah, but
about
I just don't
our
know. I
IQs
don't
being on
know.
that thing, but I never retain what mine is.
It never said explicitly what my IQ was on mine.
Oh, mine does.
Oh. Vanessa, why didn't you... Sorry, I'm distracted by the shiny thing. Why didn't Vanessa test my IQ?
We're going to have to examine this afterwards. It has to be there somewhere.
I have it in my email. We'll check it again later. After we finish the podcast.
Yes.
So... Gary also had dyslexia, and his school performance was considered so poor that he was held back a year. Now, I've said a year, possibly 2, but I did later find out during my research that it was, in fact, 2 years. Before he graduated from high school in 1969.
Oh yeah, which would make sense because he was 20 when he graduated.
Yeah, so he did get held back 2 years, because I think typically in America you're 18 when you graduate.
I think so, because it's kind of roughly the same here, 17 or 18
17
for
or
most
18,
people.
yeah. So Ridgway is also said to have dabbled in arson. He paid a girl to allow him to fondle her genitals, and he's also said to have suffocated a cat during his childhood. When he was around 15 or 16 years old, he walked up to a 6-year-old boy on the street and said, quote, "You know, there's people around here that like to kill little boys like you." And he then stabbed this 6-year-old boy in the liver. The boy ran away, bleeding profusely, and luckily survived after spending several weeks in the hospital.
Yeah, that'd do it. That would do several weeks.
Mm-hmm, it would. The liver. Stabbed him.
The liver, and like that really bleeds.
Yeah.
Not that getting stabbed anywhere else doesn't bleed.
Yeah, but
like,
the liver does. Yeah.
That's a big organ.
Yeah.
Okay, so after all that really nice, great information, very positive vibes, like all of our cases, of course.
Yeah, so positive. All of our positivity.
Actually, speaking of positive, bear with, give it about a paragraph, and that'll relate, and that'll make sense.
Okay.
Ridgway graduated from, by the way, adult life. I don't know, did I say that?
We're on to his adult years. He's no longer a child stabbing 6-year-olds.
Exactly. Ridgway graduated from high school in June of 1969 at the age of 20. He then enlisted in the US Navy, where he served for 2 years before being honourably discharged in July of 1971.
The amount of times that we've covered a serial killer or just a killer who has been in the Navy, the Army, or...
And it's an honourable discharge.
The Marines or something, and they've always got an honourable discharge.
But you know what? Maybe it's just a case of they don't want, like... It's easier because of the amount of people they probably have to discharge. In most cases, it's probably just easier to do an honourable one, because otherwise I feel like people would ask questions about the types of people going into that. Yeah,
but as well, I suppose
if it was all dishonourable.
A lot of it is about how well they hide that little evil part of themselves.
Yes. Now, the positive part. In December of 1969, Ridgway was diagnosed with gonorrhea.
The clap.
Yes. No STI or STD shaming, all the same, just him because he's a cunt.
Yeah. If anyone deserves to get gonorrhea, it's Gary Ridgway.
At the least gonorrhea, but I hear her. On the 15th of August 1970, he married his high school girlfriend. I was surprised that didn't come up earlier because I couldn't find anything about her during high school. Not to say there's nothing there, but I didn't find anything specifically about the high school times they were together. Okay. Just the marriage afterwards. So he married his high school girlfriend Claudia Barrows at Fort Lawton Chapel before going to Vietnam as part of his Navy service. Now, Ridgway has an incredibly high sex drive, and he spent a considerable amount of time with prostitutes during his time in the Navy. He contracted... he contracted gonorrhea once again.
Oh!
which made him angry. However, it did not stop him from continuing to have unprotected sex with prostitutes.
Like,
and again, no sex work shaming, but I'm like,
if you got it twice,
learn.
Just start using some protection, please.
Like, I mean, at least it's treatable, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not looking forward to the clinic this week.
I just feel bad.
America was so fun.
It's the fact that you just slipped that in there.
Anyway.
It's, as I was saying, I feel bad for his wife. His wives. It's because he had multiple.
Yeah. Not at the same time, though.
No. He wasn't a polygamist? Polygamist.
Monogamous.
No, monogamous is when you are in a relationship with one person.
Yeah, so then you said he wasn't, so I said monogamous.
Yeah, sorry, he was monogamous. My mistake, I misheard.
He was not monogamous.
I misheard. He wasn't polygamous. Polygamy is when you have multiple wives. He was monogamous.
Oh yeah, well he wasn't monomous either because he was cheating back with all the prostitutes.
Yeah, but
he was neither.
He was a rat bastard.
That'll do. Yeah.
But yeah, I just feel bad for his wives, especially like his first wife. She probably got gonorrhea off him twice.
At least once, anyway, more than likely.
Where
was that?
Angry. I would be so.
Oh yeah.
Angry.
So Claudia, who was 19 years old, started dating other people while Ridgway was serving in Vietnam. Can you blame her? And in under a year, their marriage came to an end. They divorced on the 14th of January 1972. After his time in the Navy, Ridgway decided to move to the Seattle area. So soon after his move to Seattle, he got a job as a truck painter, which he worked as for around 30 years, apparently. So, on the 14th of December 1973, Ridgway married, I love this first name, Marcia Lorraine Brown.
Do you love that name because the actress...
Yes, Marcia Cross.
Yeah, the actress who plays Brie.
That is probably it.
In Desperate Housewives.
Yes, I love her. Anyway, and she's now known as Marcia Lorraine Winslow. I love that surname.
The surname Winslow.
Whom Ridgway had a son with. Who they named Matthew, and he was born on the 5th of September 1975, I believe. During his marriage to Marcia, Ridgway became extremely religious, and he began going door to door to try and convert other people to whatever religion he was practicing. He would read the Bible, so there's the religion, Catholic or Christian, out loud at work and at home, and he would insist... Yeah.
Imagine you're at work.
You walk in the door. Leviticus 5:0. I don't even know if that's a real thing.
Leviticus is something to do with the Bible.
I know that is, but I made up the 5:0 part. Yeah. Hawaii 5:0.
A reading from the...
Yeah, but imagine you come home and your husband...
the Gospel according to Matthew.
There we go. Oh my God, I wonder is that why he went with the name Matthew? Was the religious stuff starting then? So yeah, he would read the Bible out loud at work and at home, and he would insist that Marcia abide by the strict teachings of the church pastor. During this time, he also wanted Marcia to have sex with him outdoors and in inappropriate places, and he was insistent on having sex multiple times a day. I love the Lord. Can we fuck in the church?
Not very Christian of you.
No. Like, you know, why are you being so, like, strict about the Bible, trying to convert people? I mean, making your wife strictly abide the church pastor's rules, but and then you're asking for all these things that are typically not associated with being a good Catholic or a good Christian. Not that you can't do it in public and be a good Catholic.
But it's generally frowned upon.
It's generally frowned upon. You don't speak about it at church, as in you probably speak about it at confession.
Yeah. By the way, Father, I made my wife have sex with me out behind the church there 2 days ago.
Yeah. It's like, do you know the stand you were reading the sermon off of today? That's how my wife got pregnant.
And she was actually facing Matthew's passages in the Bible at the time.
The microphone went into the unspeakable regions.
Okay, continue. Continue.
So, anyway, yeah, and he was also, as well as the inappropriate places and outdoors, he was insistent on having sex multiple times a day. I mean...
I wouldn't say that that's not Christian, but... I mean, no, because I think, isn't there, like, something about how...
I don't know, they're married, so all things go, I guess.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure, I don't know, is it the Catholics or just the Christians in general? They have this like belief, or they had this belief. Again, I'm not a practicing Catholic with a long time, so don't quote me on this.
Even when I was supposed to be a practicing, I don't think I was practicing. I was like, ooh, communion, money. Ooh, confirmation, money. Me, okay, that's all over now? Okay, I'm done. I found my
confirmation pledge the other day, actually. I was fucking skitting. But anyway, so there was like a belief, or there is a belief that sex is not something that should be done for enjoyment. It should be done solely for the purpose of procreation.
Oh, I've heard that before. Yeah. I don't know how strongly followed that is. Anywhere.
Any horrors.
Multiple times a day. Ridgway, despite being so religious, apparently he didn't get the memo about cheating because he continued to pay for prostitutes.
Adultery's a sin.
For sex during his
Gary.
marriage to Marcia. Marcia struggled with her weight for most of her life, so she decided in the late 1970s to have a gastric bypass surgery. And she quickly lost weight after that surgery, and many men, I suppose, began to find her more attractive, maybe more of their type. However, this made cheating bastard Ridgway jealous and insecure, and the couple began to fight. Maybe they didn't fight before this point, but anyhow, they began to fight now. Or else they began to fight more. I don't know. Marcia struggled to accept the relationship Ridgway had with his mother. Ridgway's mother controlled the couple's spending, and she made the final decisions on their purchases. Ridgway's mother would even buy his clothes. Ridgway's mother also accused Marcia of not taking care of her son, which understandably Marcia resented. I'm assuming accusing of not taking care of her grandchild, their son.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure whether to interpret that as...
What baffles me, right? Like, whether she was saying about, like, you're not taking care of Gary, or you're not taking care of
my
Matthew.
grandchild.
What baffles me is I've seen a lot of women especially on TikTok, like, telling their, like, mother-in-law horror stories.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
or even their own mother stories.
Have the audacity when you're literally so codependent with your son that you're treating his wife like shit because you don't believe that she's good enough for him? How do you have the audacity to sit there and tell her she's not raising her child correctly? Like, how does anyone have the audacity to go up to someone and be like, you're not raising your child correctly?
And I'm like, if there genuinely is genuine concern there's avenues
that you can follow.
There's protocols in place. Now, don't get me wrong, in most countries those protocols fail fucking much. So again, I can also understand why people would not want to go down those avenues because it can make things worse.
Yeah.
Not always better, which is what it's supposed to do, make it better. But anyway, unsurprisingly, Ridgway would never defend Marcia, and Marcia was left to defend and try to control her domineering mother-in-law on her own. I find Marcia's description of the mother very interesting compared to a later wife, which obviously I'll mention. I think it's in this section too.
A later wife.
A later whiff. I don't know, I realised as soon as I said it, don't look at me like that.
What?
Oh, never mind, it didn't click with you, that's fine.
What did you say?
Whiff.
Whiff.
The whiff off the church microphone. Oh, okay.
This is chaos. Look, in fairness, lads, right? We haven't sat down to record in like fucking 6 weeks.
If not 7.
just go with it, okay? Just go with it.
So in July of 1980, Ridgway and Marcia separated, and Marcia later claimed, I don't know why I giggled there, this is not funny, that Ridgway had once placed her in a chokehold during one of their...
Josh!
No, it's not funny. But you know the whole coping mechanism thing.
It's not funny, is it?
No! Because I think I'm actually crying at the same time. It's the personality disorder, leave me alone. I'm emotionally dysregulated at the moment. But no, that happened. Now, apparently, I think I say it in a minute, apparently they both have really bad tempers, so I don't know, like, what the context there is at all. But a chokehold was apparently...
Sorry, no, I just had a flashback to that time I lived with those two people, that couple. And they were fighting, and I could hear it from my bedroom. And I went in and I was like, are you okay? And at one point, one of them pushed the other one into a bookcase, and then I went back in like 10 minutes later and the other one had the other one in a chokehold. I was just like, I don't want to live here anymore.
But like that's also a situation where like, what do I do? Like that's a situation where I don't react appropriately. So I would find it not one bit funny. I'd be very extremely concerned but bust my hole laughing like I just did a second ago.
Yeah, I didn't even know what to do. I was like, can you just keep it down? And just went to bed. And then like 2 days, like the next week I had moved out.
Yes, I remember vividly.
Yeah, same.
Trauma be like
PTSD.
that. Yeah, for you, not me, obviously. I was.
I hope they don't ever listen to this podcast.
I was thinking that as you started talking, but like to be fair, even if they did listen, they'd be the only ones who know what we're on about.
Exactly.
You know.
And if you come at me, I'll name and shame you.
Yeah, okay, so let's go back and let's say that maturely. In July of 1980, Ridgway... No, I can't. I'm just going to go on to the next part. I'm going to hell. But I would like to just clarify, not funny. Not funny.
Okay, he keeps laughing, so I'm going to clarify.
And
Domestic violence is
No,
never funny.
no.
Josh is just...
Broken.
Is broken, yeah. We're both
I
broken.
would like to specify, for the sake of that, I'm off one of my medications. So I'm going to put it down to that. We're readjusting to life
unmedicated.
not even unmedicated, because I'm not fully unmedicated, but
Unsearchable.
unsedated during the day.
No, you don't
Only
take
sedated
sertraline.
at night.
It's just a
Well,
random,
same vibe.
It's just a random medication I pulled out of my head.
Same issue, different font. So on the 17th of July 1980, Marcia filed a complaint with Kent Police Department claiming that Ridgway was harassing her over the phone about divorce papers. By now, Marcia had a new boyfriend, and she also reported that Ridgway was going to obtain a gun and blow her boyfriend's head off.
Oh my god.
So, yeah, that's serious.
Mm-hmm.
On the 20th of July 1980, Marcia and Ridgway got into a physical fight. It is said that they were both known to have tempers. It didn't say who started it, how it escalated.
Or who finished it.
But that there was a physical altercation and they both had bad tempers. On the 21st of July 1980, Ridgway is accused of choking a prostitute. He had a thing for choking, it would seem. Ridgway and Marcia's divorce became final on the 27th of May 1981. Then Ridgway began to attend a Parents Without Partners meeting, and he dated several of the women he met there. One of the women he dated he got engaged to, and they had intended to marry in June of 1984. However, the woman met someone else and broke it off with Ridgway. So that's nice. She was obviously so interested.
Yeah.
It was at It was at these meetings or functions where he met Judith Mawson in February of 1985, who would be his third wife. Imagine that, we're already on the third wife. A few months into dating, Judith moved in with Ridgway, and they got married in June of 1988. I just think that's in poor taste, getting married the same month you were supposed to get married to the second one.
Yeah.
Well, not the second one, but the one you were dating.
The one who left him for someone
I would
else.
have an issue with that. I wonder, did she not know that until like the whole story came out and like this became public? Because I'd be pissed.
I feel like that's not something he would have told her. Like, oh, by the way, I was meant to get married to someone else this month.
Yeah, like I know there's a 4-year gap, but it's still that month. I'm like, for me, if you're supposed to be getting married to someone else, if you did get married to someone else, also not shaming people who've had marriages before, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But I just mean, I don't want to get married to you in the same month
that
you either
significance.
already got married before or were supposed to.
Yeah, because it's got significance to do with
In
that
some,
person.
yeah, exactly. So I'm like, that's a chapter of your life, and I don't need it intertwining to the new chapter of our life.
Exactly.
But so a few months into dating, Judith moved in with Ridgway. They got married in June 1988. Ridgway had updated the house, including replacing the carpet, apparently, before Judith had moved in. But some sources say that there was no carpet when Judith moved in, and I believe that's from an interview with her. So I would take that
I had seen
to be that.
That apparently there was no carpet in the house when she moved in, and that apparently detectives later said to her that he had probably used the carpet to
dispose of
dispose of a body.
Yeah. But I'm like, why was all the carpet gone?
Well,
Do we touch that later?
Kind of. I'll
Okay.
go into it later.
So yeah, Judith found Ridgway to be a gentle, responsible and structured man.
Bullshit.
Yeah, pretty much. And appreciated, well, obviously that's the front he put up with her.
Yeah.
And appreciated that he had worked in the same job at this point as a truck painter for 15 years. So as far as Judith was concerned, Ridgway was like the perfect partner.
He was stable.
I don't know whether she thought that as a general thing or just for her, but perfect partner in her eyes, going by what she was seeing. Judith gave Ridgway's mother praise for how she helped Ridgway to handle things that were difficult for him, like his bank account and major expenses or purchases. And after some time, as Ridgway's mother got older, Judith took over such responsibilities. Because we have to remember, I guess, he does have a low IQ, and he was dyslexic as well, so it was probably difficult. So I'm kind of like, it shows perspective, because Judith obviously only really seemed to have good experiences with him that we know of, whereas Marcia did not. So like, it's interesting how they're both describing practically the exact same thing, but one in such a very different descriptions, like very different perspectives. So I found that quite interesting, because the way Judith describes it, it sounds like his mother was just being a good parent.
Yeah, and the way Marcia
but the other way,
it,
she sounded like a domineering bitch.
Yeah.
Not a helpful mother.
Yeah.
But then again, I guess there could have been a bit of both. Maybe there's a meeting in the middle of those two things. So Ridgway and Judith moved several times, but always stayed in the South King County area. From 1989 to 1997, Ridgway owned a residence in Des Moines in Washington. He then moved to Auburn in Washington as well, which is where he lived until he was arrested in 2001, and Judith was shocked by the arrest of her husband because he was the perfect partner. And
it's my
take
turn
it over.
for my long ass section.
Is this the murders and stuff?
So usually Josh, like no matter what way we format the cases, Josh usually gets stuck with like the long sections. But this time it was my turn.
And I'm delighted.
Yeah. So, in 1982, women began disappearing in King County. Some were found murdered and others have never been found. Many of them were teenagers and almost all of them were sex workers, and all these murders and disappearances were attributed to the Green River Killer. And as well, the bodies were often found in clusters or groups. And like near each other. So between July and August of 1982, 5 women were found in or around the Green River in King County, Washington. All 5 had a history of prostitution. I hate that word, but it
is what it is.
It is what it is.
When we use these words, there's no shaming involved.
No, absolutely not. And at least 4 of them had disappeared from Pacific Highway South, which was an area well known as a hangout for sex workers. All 5 of the women had been strangled, and over the next few years, more and more women were found dead. Most of them, as I said, were teenage girls, and they were found in wooded or remote parts of King County. Most of the victims were found with no clothing or possessions, and in many instances they were not found until many years after their disappearances, leaving only skeletal remains behind. With it being the 80s, it also took years for many of these poor women and girls to be identified. By 1984, there were 49 victims attributed to the Green River Killer. That's over a span of 2 years.
That's fucking wild.
Like, over a span of 2 years. Like, how the fuck? So 7 of these 49 women were listed as missing, as their bodies had never been found, and the police were receiving lots of contradictory tips claiming that they were still alive. Now, due to the enormity and severity of the case, the King County Sheriff's Office established the Green River Killer Task Force, pulling in detectives from law enforcement agencies throughout the county. This actually included Robert Bob Keppel and Dave Reichert, who we have mentioned in previous cases, namely the Ted Bundy case.
Mm-hmm.
And funnily enough, Ted Bundy actually offered his opinions on the Green River Killer case.
Imagine that. So, what are you doing this week? Oh, we just have a consultant. Oh, what precinct are they coming from? What state?
Prison.
Prison. It's a serial killer consultant. And I don't mean a serial killer expert. I mean an actual. It's Bundy. It's Bundy.
It's Bundy.
Hi, Theodore.
It's Teddy. So Bundy spoke to the psychology, motivation and behaviour of the killer and suggested that he was revisiting the dump sites to engage in necrophilia with the bodies, something that actually did turn out to be true.
Yeah.
So the task force grew with each murder. They investigated the murders, disappearances and thousands of tips, as well as collecting evidence in relation to hundreds of suspects, but despite their efforts they could find nothing definitive to identify the killer. Now, the task force was able to use the most recent advances in forensic science and investigative technology, but as I said earlier, this was the 80s and these advances were nothing like what we have today. In 1988, investigators sent evidence from several of the victims to a private lab for DNA typing, but with the technology available at the time, they weren't able to obtain a profile or anything concrete, and it was also around this time that the task force ended up being reduced in size due to budget cuts. By 1992, only one detective remained, and that was Tom Jensen. He was left in charge of handling the cases and reviewing any new tips. In 2001, Detective Jensen decided it was time to take advantage of newer technologies and forensic science. He submitted biological evidence from several of the victims to the Washington State Patrol Crime Laboratory.
That's a mouthful.
Honestly. And this time they were able to develop a profile which was a match to Gary Leon Ridgway. Now, we're going to jump back a bit to the 80s again, just to touch on some things from the initial investigation. So, Ridgway had actually come to the attention of investigators a few times. The first time was in 1983, when a witness had come forward to say he had seen Ridgway's truck, and it appeared to be... he came forward to say that Ridgway's truck appeared to be very similar to the truck that he had seen missing woman Marie Malvar in on the night that she had disappeared. However, the witness had given a very general description of both the truck and the driver. Ridgway denied picking Marie up, and without any evidence of the case...
Circumstantial at best.
Yeah, without any evidence, the case came to a standstill. Ridgway would pop up several more times in the investigation as a potential suspect and was interviewed quite a few times. He was described as generally cooperative and admitted to dating prostitutes, including at least one of the missing victims. And I just want to say dating is a euphemism for like using the services of a sex worker. So he also admitted to soliciting at least one of the missing victims. And he also admitted to assaulting Rebecca Ridgway, claiming he did so in retaliation after she bit him. Ridgway also successfully passed a polygraph test in which he denied involvement in the murders. Now, we know these days polygraph tests are not trustworthy.
No, there's ways about, like...
There's ways of getting around them.
Exactly, and I suppose a lot of the time it depends on, like, nerves and sweat and things like that. And if you're completely, like,
I've always
not
said,
bothered...
no matter what polygraph test I would be made to take, I would fail because of my anxiety.
I would very likely be the same because I'd be so nervous and anxious, even though... It's like even when I was going over on, like... to America, and even when I was flying between the states, like from Boston to Utah to New York and stuff like that, I was like, do you know when you're going through security and you put your bag in, it's like, oh my god, what if they find like drugs? Oh my god, what if they find a bomb? It's like, you packed the fucking bag. I'm like, I don't do drugs. I'm definitely not a fucking terrorist.
But the fear.
Well, I terrorised myself, but
that doesn't count.
That's different. But I'd still be there getting pure anxious and being all sweat and be like, oh my god, I'm going to get arrested.
What if somehow someone slipped like a fucking 5-pound bag of heroin into my bag? Like, what?
Exactly. Or even like, it was so funny, I was talking to my friend and I was like, oh my god. I was like, do you know how like you've got like the FDA, and I was like, there's different rules for products and stuff like that. I know Europe tends to be the stricter one than normally.
Yeah.
But I was like, what if the toothpaste I use isn't FDA approved or something and I get arrested over my fucking toothpaste?
I don't think they'd arrest you over your toothpaste.
It's America.
They would just confiscate it.
It's America.
Because
I would not be surprised.
Was it when I was coming back from London?
London.
Meet me at the London. So when I was coming back from London, I had a bottle of dry shampoo in my bag, and it was over the
100 ml.
100 mils. So my bag got shunted to the side, and then he just went through the bag and took it out and was like, "Yeah, you can't have this." And I was like, "Yeah, grand, you can keep it. Use it away. It's grand. I won't miss it." So on April 8th, 1987, the task force actually served a search warrant for Ridgway's home, his work locker, and several vehicles that he had access to.
What I'm trying to figure out as well is, how did they know that DNA was Ridgway's? Oh, because he'd already been arrested before for solicitation, so yeah.
You're putting the horse before the cart here, Josh. Or the cart before the horse. The horse goes before the cart. So they seized hundreds of items as evidence, including carpet fibres, ropes, paint samples and plastic tarps, and these were sent to the Washington State Patrol Crime Laboratory for comparison to evidence collected from the victims, but nothing came up to link Ridgway to the crimes. Why are you shouting at me? Why is this child shouting? She's staring. So... Where am I?
Sent to the lab.
But nothing came up to link Ridgway to the crimes. Now, bear in mind, this was the 80s. As I said, things weren't what they are now. So...
Hence why it was done again in 2001.
Mm-hmm. You're really like just...
You already said this a minute ago. I'm not putting the horse in front of the cart.
I did not say that.
You did.
When? I did.
Yeah,
sorry,
no, thank you.
My apologies. My most grievous
That's why I was wondering, because you'd already said that he'd been that they'd identified the DNA, and I was like, but how? Where did they have his DNA in the first place?
I had forgotten I had said that. My brain is mush. So... Investigators also obtained and analysed Ridgway's financial records, but the most significant piece of evidence that they collected was a saliva sample from Ridgway. And that's how they knew that it was his DNA.
But what I was figuring out a while ago was, how did they know in order to get the search warrants without his DNA already being in the system?
I suppose
But then there was the arrest for solicitation, but I don't think we'd mentioned them yet.
No, but I suppose
so that's why I was saying it.
I don't think he was the only one that they served search warrants on, to be fair. Like, it was just he was considered a strong suspect at the time, but nothing was found, so then he was let go. So they collected a saliva sample from Ridgway, and this is what broke the case open in 2001 when it was compared to partial DNA on vaginal swabs taken from Marcia Chapman, as well as pubic hairs taken from Opal Mills. And these were two of his victims. This comparison was done by forensic scientist Beverly Himmick of the Washington Laboratory. I am going to be referring to it as the Washington Laboratory from now on.
Yeah. Mouthful. That is definitely enough.
And around the same time, forensic scientist Jean C. Johnston analysed vaginal swabs from Carol Christensen, and she found that the DNA profile obtained from the sperm on the vaginal swab was a match to Ridgway, and she calculated that not more than one individual in the entire world would exhibit this DNA profile, with the exception of an identical twin, which he obviously didn't have. So this discovery is what police had been hoping to find for almost 20 years, and they immediately began prepping for an arrest. They put together another task force. This one was called the Green River Homicides Investigation, in order to prepare the cases against Ridgway while reviewing the remaining unsolved murders. On November 16th, 2001, Ridgway was arrested after attempting to pick up an undercover officer posing as a sex worker. He was released later that day, and ironically, when he was being interviewed, he asked them not to contact his wife. He said, quote, "You can contact the Green River Task Force. They know me really well."
Who said that?
Gary Ridgway. He obviously was referring to the fact that they had interviewed him so many times, not realising that they knew that he was the killer.
He thought he was being smug. He thought he was getting away with it.
He thought he was like the shit. So 2 weeks after this, on November 30th, Ridgway was arrested for murder as he left work at the Kenworth plant in Renton. On December 5th, 2001, the King County prosecuting attorney charged Ridgway with 4 counts of aggravated murder in the first degree for the deaths of Carol Christensen, Cynthia Hines, Marcia Chapman, and Opal Mills. In 3 of these counts, DNA evidence linked him directly to the crimes, and the body of Cynthia Chapman was discovered just a few feet away from 2 of the other victims, leaving no doubt that the same killer was responsible.
I wonder, obviously, as we know, he just plucked his victims out of wherever,
Yeah.
But I wonder, did it play any part in the process of choosing the victim? Or did it end up giving him a thrill after the fact that one of them had the same first name as his second wife?
Yeah, and as well, I think, didn't one of his wives originally have the surname Chapman? Or am I wrong?
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh, I must have misheard you, so. But yeah, I don't know, he killed so many women that it's possible he didn't even click on.
Exactly. Did he even get a name? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I know...
And if he got a name, did he get a real name?
I know a lot of prostitutes won't use their real names. They'll go by, nicknames.
Yeah, an alter ego,
Yeah. So on April 15th, 2002, the King County prosecuting attorney gave written notice that he would be seeking the death penalty. And over the next year, investigators worked tirelessly to review and investigate the other Green River killer murders, investigating for further forensic work and possible charging. Hundreds of items were sent for forensic testing in both public and private labs. And, excuse me, in an effort to ensure the case would go to trial in a timely manner, the King County Superior Court set a date for March 28, 2003. There wasn't long to go before this deadline when private lab Microtrace reported their findings. They had found tiny spheres of spray paint on the clothing of 2 victims, Wendy Caulfield and Deborah Estes. And this paint was an identical match to the highly specialised DuPont Imron paint that the Kenworth truck plant used, and this was where Ridgway worked.
Mm-hmm.
Wendy Caulfield was the first of 5 victims found in or near the Green River between July and August of 1982. And Ridgway was already charged with the murders of the last 3 victims that were found there, these being Opal Mills, Cynthia Hines and Marcia Chapman. Detectives believed it was obvious that he had also killed Deborah Bonner, whose body was found in the Green River just a few weeks after Wendy and only a few days before Opal, Cynthia and Marcia. As a result of this, on March 27th, 2003, the prosecuting attorney filed 3 more counts of aggravated murder for Wendy Caulfield, Deborah Bonner and Deborah Estes. Ridgway.
I keep going to say it like that as well.
Ridgway pleaded not guilty to the additional counts, and a trial date was set for July 2004. Now, let's discuss a little bit about how Ridgway would gain the confidence or the trust of these women and kind of lure them to...
It's shit's getting serious because every ounce of giddiness I had at the start has just evaporated.
Yeah. So he would gain their confidence and lure them to his kill site, which was typically his the back of his pickup truck, which was covered with a canopy so that nobody could see in. Or he would bring them to his home or to a secluded spot outdoors. He had a few different ruses to put his victims at ease, one of which was to use a picture of his son to gain their trust, so he would be showing them his ID. But
how do people not realise that psychopaths and serial killers can have children too?
Yeah, but he would basically flip open his wallet to show them his ID, and
it would just conveniently be there.
There would be a picture of his son just there to kind of put them at ease, I suppose. He also stated that many of them, about 50 by his own estimates, had asked if he was the Green River Killer, and he would point out his small stature and state it couldn't possibly be him because he wasn't tall enough, basically. More often than not, the prostitutes would refuse to date him, thinking he was an undercover police officer. So to assuage these women, he would carry beer in his truck and offer them one, which would make them relax, believing he wasn't a cop, because I suppose a cop wouldn't offer you a beer.
Legally probably can't do that.
No, they can't. Yeah. Because as well, you have to think a lot of his victims were minors. So he would also offer to become...
And then obviously over there, even if they were 18, 19...
Yeah, it's 21.
There's just 21 is the legal drinking age.
So he would also offer to become a regular customer, offer to lend them his vehicles, tell them that he would get them jobs, or, offer to feed them. And if the conditions weren't right for murder, for example, if the woman was with someone else or had a companion with her, he would offer them a lift to gain their trust for when he could catch them alone.
Alone, yeah.
His preferred kill site was at his home, and he would use his son's bedroom as a way to make them feel more secure, because I suppose they would look at it as...
Well, he's a dad.
Yeah. Or, he's got a young kid, he's not going to hurt me.
Is the kid there, though?
Is the child in the room with us right now?
Well, actually, going by later on, it doesn't matter.
So, when he took them to his house, he would encourage them to use the bathroom, but this was for his own benefit, as his method of killing was strangulation, and victims of this often lose control of themselves and become incontinent. Ridgway said that he killed most of his victims in the same way. He would tell them that he could only orgasm while entering them from behind, and while in this position, he would wait for them to lift their head before he would... I'm going to do a little demonstration for you. So he would wrap his arm around their neck so that their arm was in the crook of his neck, or their neck was in the crook of his arm, like on his inner elbow. Yeah. And then he would use his other arm for leverage to get a really good grip and a really tight grip.
Yeah, for any struggling.
He would use his other arm for leverage. He would tell them that if they stopped struggling, he would let them go, as this led to less resistance and made it easier for him to get what he wanted, which was to murder them. Mm-hmm. Occasionally, he would use ligatures, as the woman often left scratches on him while fighting for their lives, and in my opinion, it's a shame nobody managed to gouge out an eye or two. Yeah. Now, this next part. Ew, is all I can say. So at first, Ridgway denied any allegations of necrophilia, but after a few days of being interviewed, he admitted to having post-mortem sexual intercourse with some of his victims. His desire for this was apparently so strong that he once drove back to visit the body of one of his victims and engaged in his usual disgusting acts while his son was asleep in his truck 30 feet away.
30 feet's not even that far.
No.
Because that's the main point of the story there.
And he assured detectives after this admission that his son was, quote, a hard sleeper, because that makes it okay.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, fair enough if your child's a heavy sleeper, you have a woman over and you do the deed and they leave.
Yeah. When they're alive.
Yeah.
And can consent.
Yeah. That's okay. That's fine. Adults be adults, adults got needs. Mm-hmm.
Now, he claims to have done this with 10 or so of his victims and claims it was more for convenience than anything else, saying that the bodies were close to his home and said, quote, just wanted sex and it was free. I didn't have to pay for it. I killed her.
He didn't seem to have an issue, though, finding girlfriends when he was finding girlfriends and wives and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, if you do that, you don't really have to pay for that either.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot that I didn't include because it was just really graphic. But if you do want to do research on this yourself, just be mindful. I've read things that I will probably not be able to forget. Ridgway was able to put to bed speculation about why some of his victims were found on their backs and seemed to be posed with their legs spread in unnatural positions. And this was because these were the victims that he had engaged in necrophilia with.
And rigor mortis is a thing.
Had to force their legs open in order to do what he wanted to do. Now, this just might be the most disgusting murderer we've covered. I felt sick just typing that out. He also covered many of his victims with branches, brush, and whatever was at hand, because in his words, she's garbage. So I put stuff over her that was garbage.
I would just like to say, first of all, your victim was not garbage. Second of all,
you are garbage.
Trees are not garbage.
No.
And neither is, like, bush and flowers and stuff. So, man's out here acting like he emptied out a trash can. But, yeah, that's a disgusting thing to say.
That's your turn.
Okay.
Done.
So, by April of 2003, the prosecutors and detectives had finished their review of any and all cases that could be linked to the Green River killer. These reviews were huge and made up of hundreds of witness interviews. As Tanya mentioned earlier, Ridgway was arrested and charged. I don't know, did you mention the charges, did you?
The 3 counts of aggravated murder first,
There
was 2 first, and then he was charged with 3 more.
And I've just jotted that together. So, Ridgway was arrested and charged with 4 counts of aggravated murder in the first degree, and then due to the spray paint that was matched to Ridgway's work and him being found on the clothing of multiple victims, this resulted in the filing of 3 additional counts of aggravated murder in the first degree. However, 42 of the Green River cases were still uncharged, and there was minute physical or circumstantial evidence connecting Gary Ridgway to any of them. The lack of evidence pointing to any suspect meant that without a confession, the 42 cases would stay unsolved. After the arraignment of Ridgway, his attorneys contacted the King County prosecuting attorney and asked if the prosecutor would not seek the death penalty in exchange for guilty pleas to the charged counts as well as numerous other cases. Ridgway's attorneys offered that Ridgway would plead guilty to the 7 counts he was being charged with, as well as 40 to 47 additional counts of murder if the prosecution agreed not to pursue the death penalty. Ridgway offered to give an open and honest account of his crimes in King County and to point investigators to the remains of numerous undiscovered victims. The prosecutor had to decide in April of 2003 whether to reject the offer put forward by Ridgway and his attorneys and proceed to trial on the 7 charged counts alone, allowing a jury to determine if Ridgway was guilty of the crimes, and if he was, should he receive the death penalty. If it went to trial and the jury found him guilty and decided on the death penalty, there's always the possibility that Ridgway would appeal the verdict for many years before then being executed if he hadn't already died of natural causes before his execution date. And as said, the trial would also have been only on the 7 charges, meaning so many victims would not receive any inkling of justice that they deserved, and some may never have even been discovered in terms of their remains. So then on the other hand, the prosecutor could accept Ridgway and his attorney's offer, taking away a jury's opportunity to sentence Ridgway to death, but at least with this option much more would come to light and some semblance of justice could be obtained for many more victims, including retrieving the remains of undiscovered victims so that they could receive a proper burial, cremation service, whatever their family or friends or state preference, if they didn't have anyone, would be. This option may remove the death penalty as a possibility, but at least Ridgway would be held accountable for all the murders he committed, not just a few. And he would not be executed, but he would not be able to appeal his convictions, and he would ultimately die in prison because he would be there for the rest of his life. So on the 13th of June 2003, the King County prosecuting attorney and Ridgway agreed that the death penalty would be avoided in exchange for Ridgway providing thorough, honest and accurate information regarding his crimes in King County, and that Ridgway answer all questions during interviews with the police or prosecuting attorney. Ridgway agreed to disclose the existence and exact location of all undiscovered remains of his victims, and he also agreed to plead guilty to aggravated murder in the first degree for all the murders he committed in King County. The terms of this plea deal required Ridgway to address not only the quote-unquote official list of 49 victims, but any and all other crimes that he may have committed prior to 1982 or after 1984. This plea deal would not only bring the mystery of the Green River Killer to a close, but it would also provide some answers and maybe some sort of closure to the families and friends of victims. It would also help the authorities as well to identify what unsolved murders Ridgway was not responsible for, so that the police could investigate those murders, focusing on finding other viable suspects. Now, this plea deal, or agreement, whatever you want to call it, also stated that if Ridgway was not completely open and honest, that he could face the death penalty for any of the murders he did not disclose. So if Ridgway failed to confess to a murder that he was responsible for, and it later came to light, the prosecution would be able to seek the death penalty against Ridgway for that crime.
It's kind of a bit of motivation for him to be
incentive.
truly open and honest.
So in June of 2003, the task force began to extensively interview Ridgway and continued to do so over the next 5 months. Detectives confronted Ridgway with all the Green River murders, as well as any similar unsolved homicides. Ridgway claimed that he had murdered over 60 women in King County, and he led the police to the places he left bodies, and he described what he had done there. Ridgway's memory of these locations exceeded all the information given by his attorneys and the knowledge of detectives who had even worked the case for decades. On top of this, he identified multiple dump sites on cases that were never even considered to be Green River cases.
Oh my God.
Ridgway led the task force to many sites where he claimed to have left undiscovered bodies. Human remains were found at these sites, most of them identified, but as of 2021 there's still 2 unidentified, and I'm pretty sure as of now there's still 2 unidentified. So during over 4 months of interviews, Ridgway was questioned about specific homicides, as well as going through his general habits and thoughts in relation to his killings. It was quickly observed by detectives that the information from Ridgway, oh my God, why do I keep struggling so badly with his name?
Same.
Came in dribs and drabs, or bits and pieces, which is, as predicted by experts on serial killers, they say that that's how you get information from them.
They like
little
to keep
here and there.
That element of control, I suppose.
Now, at first, even though Ridgway certainly had the incentive to be honest in interviews, he acknowledged that he was a pathological liar. Ridgway also acknowledged that it was hard for him to be honest after being so successfully deceptive about the killings for decades.
Oh, sorry, hon. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry to shit on your parade.
Sorry you got caught. Not really, though. Delilah. Ridgway also put forward that another reason he would lie or minimise his conduct or behaviour was because he believed that a popular true crime author would write a book about him, and he wanted to portray himself in the best possible light. Sir, if a true crime author is writing a book about you, it's not for your charming smile and your charity work.
It's not a good thing.
Well, unless you're Ted Bundy, then apparently it is about your charming smile and charisma as well as everything else.
That's like Ted Bundy. He was not a good looking man.
It's kind of like that clip from Gogglebox where it's like, oh, we all love a bad boy. Not a fucking terrorist, Chris.
But yeah, look, Ted Bundy. He's not a good looking man.
Yeah,
and that is a hill that I am willing to die on.
Like, I can see how some people might be interested. Like, he's attractive in the old-fashioned sense, but not by modern standards.
I disagree. I don't think he's attractive by any standards, to be honest.
I think he was attractive in a 1950s way, but
no,
I don't find him attractive in a 1950s way.
Cary Grant was attractive in a 1950s way.
Who's that?
He's an actor.
Oh. Yeah, so early in the interviews... I might have named the wrong actor, but sure, look, it's fine. Someone's attractive in the 1950s way anyway. Early in the interviews, Ridgway had made multiple self-serving claims, such as how he had not planned to kill any of his victims, and that he ended up killing them in a rage. Sorry. Are you okay?
I just thought about James Dean. Now, he was attractive. James Dean was an attractive man.
Excuse me.
Gave my heart little flutters there.
Funny flutter.
In an interview, sorry.
Oh, yeah. So, early in the interviews, he'd made multiple self-serving claims, such as how he had not planned to kill any of his victims, and that he ended up killing them in a rage, when something about the encounter would provoke him, such as a woman not faking an orgasm enthusiastically. An orgasm! Such as a woman not faking an orgasm enthusiastically enough, or if the woman hurried him. There were plenty of stupid excuses like that.
Hormones just didn't seem realistic, so I had to kill her.
She moaned like a heifer in heat.
Like a heifer in heat.
Actually, no, that's enthusiastic, I guess. But do heifers have heat?
I don't know. She moaned like my cat in heat.
Yeah.
She's that cat.
That cat is always in heat.
She's constantly in heat. Never stops.
I swear, like, we talk all the time, and I swear every time we talk, she's in heat.
She's in
or
the
you don't even
background.
have to tell me. I can just hear.
No. It's more like hang on. It's more like.
Girl thinks she's some sort of parakeet crossed with a cat.
That's the exact noise my cat makes when she's in heat, lads. Just
But
so
like,
you know.
yeah, loads of bullshit, stupid excuses like that. However, he later acknowledged, what we all thought, that many of those claims were bullshit, and that once he had gotten a woman into his house, he killed her regardless of how she acted or how he felt. That was just his little struggle with the pathologically lying for getting away with it for so long.
I want to be seen as good. Oh my god, the microphone fell. I want to be seen as good. You're a murderer, Gregory.
Gregory.
No, his name's not Greg.
No, it's not.
Greg's his brother shit.
I was like,
Sorry.
I thought we were making a joke, and it just reminded me. Have you seen those TikToks of that dude? Gregory. Yeah.
Gregory. It's giving Stephen.
But anyway, wait, what's his name? Gary.
Gary, sorry. Sorry to
Gary.
Greg. Sorry to Greg Ridgway.
Okay, so Ridgway also initially not only claimed but insisted that he stopped killing in 1985, the year he met his third wife, Judith Mawson. However, as the interviews progressed, the year he last killed changed from 1985 to 1987, then to 1991, and again to 1998, and then to some unknown time before his arrest in 2001. So basically, he didn't choose to stop at all. He was stopped because he was caught.
He didn't stop, he slowed down and then he got caught.
Yeah, basically. As we know, Ridgway had every incentive to confess to every murder and to be honest, otherwise he could face a death penalty. However, he did not confess to every murder that was originally attributed to the Green River Killer. As well as this, Ridgway rejected detectives' efforts to suggest he had committed numerous other unsolved and similar homicides. On one occasion he declared, "You can put her on the list of mine, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to say I killed her because I didn't kill her." Ridgway was clear that he would not claim to kill someone unless he actually did it. He explained why he would not claim a murder he didn't commit as follows. "Why? If it isn't mine, because I have pride in what I do. I don't want to take it from anybody else."
Excuse the fuck out of me.
He's pride in what he does.
This is like that resource that we found that was like occupation, murderer.
Yeah.
He really looked at it
as an occupation.
as his full-time job.
Yeah.
What a sick fucker.
So yeah, he wouldn't do it because he takes pride in what he does do. So if he didn't do it,
Why am I sitting like one
not
of the guys
involving.
from Friday?
All that's missing is legs wide open and just being like, "Well, bro."
No, because like, do you know the damn?
Oh yes. That's yes. How can we not know the damn?
Bye, Felicia.
And how, of course, we can't trust a serial killer. So even with the incentive to be honest to avoid the death penalty, how do we know he's not lying?
Yeah.
You know.
This is true.
During interviews at one point, Ridgway claimed he was not very concerned about the death penalty. He said
Then
that...
why was there a plea bargain?
Yeah, but as well, what I'm saying is, maybe if he's not that pushed about getting caught down the line, he could be lying out left, right and centre because he's like, oh, well, what will be, will be. Because
that's a really
isn't
pretty cat.
But he said that he would rather live than die, but he did tell a forensic psychologist, well, I've read up a little bit about it, injection, and then could take 7 or 8 years before getting it. Plus, the books say it's a process that you just go to sleep and your heart stops, so there's very little pain.
Did he have a stutter?
I don't know, but I'm
'Cause I've
assuming it's the low IQ as well.
Oh, it could be, because I know in a lot of the direct quotes that I've seen, he's kind of, it seems like he's struggling to find the words.
Yeah. So in the end, Ridgway had admitted to committing most of the murders on the official list of Green River cases and 6 unsolved homicides. Back to you in the studio. Meaning the driver's seat of the car.
We pause it a second.
Stay tuned after the break.
Twisted Talks would like to thank you for your patience. We are back. So Ridgway was placed in solitary confinement at Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla in January 2004 on May 8. Work brain.
Me all day.
So,
if one more fly touches me.
We were doing our research and the flies kept going for Josh and he was losing his absolute
I swear to God,
mind.
like everyone thinks that New York can be dirty. And fair enough, when all the rubbish goes out at 10:30, it is kind of smelly. But I only saw a fly like once.
Whereas here, they're fucking everywhere. So I'm going to start that section again. Ridgway was placed in solitary confinement at Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla in January 2004. On May 14th, 2015, he was transferred to the High Security Federal Prison, USP Florence, east of Canyon City, Colorado. And in September 2015, after a public outcry and discussions with Governor Jay Inslee, it was announced by Corrections Secretary Bernie Warner that Ridgway would be moved back to Washington to create easier access for open murder investigations, and he was brought back to the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla
What the fuck is that?
on October 24th, 2015. What the fuck is what?
That.
What the fuck is that?
Yeah!
I've never seen a bug like that before. Why has it got a tail? Get off my window.
That's coming through relatively loud on the camera. On the camera, says me.
Sorry, guys. Yes, that's on October 24th, 2015, he was moved back to the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla, which... Do y'all really have a place called Walla Walla?
Walla Walla Bing Bang.
Because I like that. I like it.
Walla Walla Bing Bang if you drop the soap.
It's got pizzazz.
Pizzazz. I love how it's a prison, but it's got pizzazz.
Pizzazz.
It's me.
It's your turn.
Okay. So, Gary Ridgway was charged and pled guilty to a total of 49 counts of aggravated murder in the first degree. The number of women in which Ridgway claims to have murdered is much higher. I believe it's in the 70s or the 80s or something like that.
Man was ambitious.
Yeah, in all the wrong things. So Gary Ridgway is confirmed to have killed 49 women. 47 of these women have been identified, while 2 remain unidentified to this day. The remains of all 49 women were found. They were all found, yeah. I confused myself a little bit there, but they were all found. It's just 2 of them are not identified. We will now briefly go through the list of victims, and as always, we send all our love to the victims, their families and friends, and anyone who's been affected by this despicable man or any other circumstances, domestic abuse, anything that's been mentioned in this. That is all the love and healing vibes sending your way. So on the 8th of July 1982, 16-year-old Wendy Lee Cofield disappeared. Her body was found on the 15th of July 1982.
And just to say as well, these are all the confirmed victims that we're going through right now. Giselle Ann Lavorne was 17 years old when she disappeared on July 17th, 1982, and her body was found on September 25th, 1982.
On the 25th of July 1982, 23-year-old Deborah Lynn Bonner disappeared. Her body was found on the 12th of August 1982.
Marcia Faye Chapman was 31 years old when she disappeared on August 1st, 1982, and her body was found on August 15th, 1982.
On the 11th of August 1982, 17-year-old Cynthia Jean Hinds disappeared. Her body was found on the 15th of August 1982.
Opal Charmaine Mills,
I love that name.
It's so pretty, was 16 years old when she disappeared on August 12th, 1982, and her body was found on August 15th, 1982.
On the 29th of August 1982, 16-year-old Terry Renee Milligan disappeared. Her body was found on the 1st of April 1984.
Mary Bridget Meehan was 18 years old when she disappeared on September 15th, 1982, and her body was found on November 13th, 1982.
On the 20th of September 1982, 15-year-old Deborah Lorraine Estes, sorry if I'm pronouncing her surname wrong, disappeared. Her body was found on the 30th of May 1988.
Linda Jane Rule was 16 years old when she disappeared on September 26th, 1982, and her body was found on January 31st, 1983.
On the 8th of October 1982, 23-year-old Denise Darcel Bush disappeared. Her body was found on the 12th of June 1985.
Shonda Leah Summers was 16 years old when she disappeared on October 9th, 1982, and her body was found on August 11th, 1983.
Between the 20th and 22nd of October 1982, 18-year-old Shirley Marie Sherrill disappeared. Her body was found on the 14th of June 1985.
Rebecca Becky Marrero was 20 years old when she disappeared on December 3rd, 1982, and her body was found on December 21st, 2010. Sorry. That's a long gap.
On the 24th of December 1982, 15-year-old Colleen Renee Brockman disappeared. Her body was found on the 26th of May 1984.
Sandra Denise Major was 20 years old when she disappeared on December 24th, 1982, and her body was found on December 30th, 1985.
Wendy Stevens, 14 years old, was reported missing in 1983. Her body was found on the 21st of March 1984. However, investigators believe her body was there for a year or more before being discovered.
Alma Ann Smith was 18 years old when she disappeared on March 3rd, 1983, and her body was found on April 2nd, 1984.
Between the 8th and 14th of March 1983, 17-year-old Dolores Laverne Williams disappeared. Her body was found on the 31st of March 1984.
Gail Lynn Matthews was 23 years old when she disappeared on April 10th, 1983, and her body was found on September 18th, 1983.
On the 14th of April 1983, 19-year-old Andrea Marion Childers disappeared. Her body was found on the 11th of October 1989.
Sandra K. Gabbert was 17 years old when she disappeared on April 17th, 1983, and her body was found on April 1st, 1984.
On the 17th of April 1983, 16-year-old Kimmy Kai Pitzer disappeared. Her body was found on the 15th of December 1983.
Marie M. Malvar was 18 years old when she disappeared on April 30th, 1983, and her body was found on September 26th, 2003.
On the 3rd of May 1983, 21-year-old Carol Ann Christensen disappeared. Her body was found on the 8th of May 1983.
Martina Teresa Authorley was 18 years old when she disappeared on May 22nd, 1983, and her body was found on November 14th, 1984.
On the 23rd of May 1983, 18-year-old Cheryl Lee Wims disappeared. Her body was found on the 22nd of March 1984. I don't know why, but that one gave me shivers.
Interesting. Yvonne Shelley Antosh was 19 years old when she disappeared on May 31st, 1983. Her body was found on October 15th, 1983, and I just want to say as well, Shelley is not her middle name, it was her nickname.
Okay. Between the 31st of May and the 13th of June 1983, 15-year-old Carrie Ann Rose, I'm not sure how to, R-O-I-S. I don't know whether to pronounce it like a French way or an American way.
Royce?
But disappeared, and her body was found on the 10th of March 1985.
Constance Elizabeth Naon, N-A-O-N, Neon.
What you're saying is the closest thing I could think as well, anyway.
Was 19 years old when she disappeared on June 8th, 1983, and her body was found on October 27th, 1983.
On the 18th of July 1983, 22-year-old Kelly Marie Ware disappeared. Her body was found on the 29th of October 1983.
Tina Marie Thompson was 21 years old when she disappeared on July 25th, 1983, and her body was found on April 20th, 1984.
On the 18th of August 1983, 16-year-old April Dawn...
Show me, which one? Buttram.
Disappeared. Her body was found on the 30th of August 2003, 20 years later.
Yeah, one of mine.
Some of them are crazy, like.
Debbie May Abernathy was 26 years old when she disappeared on September 5th, 1983, and her body was found on March 31st, 1984.
On the 12th of September 1983, 19-year-old Tracy Ann Winston disappeared. Her body was found on the 27th of March 1986.
Maureen Sue Feeney was 19 years old when she disappeared on September 28th, 1983, and her body was found on May 2nd, 1986.
On the 11th of October 1983, 25-year-old Mary Sue Bello, or Bayo, depending on where they're from, disappeared, and her body was found on the 12th of October 1984.
Pamela Annette Avant was 15 years old when she disappeared on October 26th, 1983, and her body was found on August 16th, 2003.
On the 30th of October 1983, 22-year-old Delise Louise Pleasure disappeared. Her body was found on the 14th of February 1984.
Kimberly L. Nelson was 21 years old when she disappeared on November 1st, 1983, and her body was found on June 14th, 1986.
On the 23rd of December 1983, 19-year-old Lisa Yates disappeared, and her body was found on the 13th of March 1984.
Mary Exetta West was 16 years old when she disappeared on February 6th, 1984, and her body was found on September 8th, 1985.
On the 21st of March 1984, 17-year-old Cindy Ann Smith disappeared. Her body was found on the 27th of June 1987.
Patricia Michelle Barzak was 19 years old when she disappeared on October 17th, 1986, and her body was found on February 3rd, 1993.
On the 7th of February 1987, 21-year-old Roberta Joseph Hayes disappeared, and her body was found on the 11th of September 1991.
Martha Reeves, Martha Reeves was 36 years old when she disappeared on March 5th, 1990, and her body was found on September 20th, 1990.
In January of 1998, 38-year-old Patricia Yellowrobe disappeared. Her body was found on the 6th of August 1998.
Unidentified white female, also known as Jane Doe B17, was between 14 and 18 years old when she went missing between December 1980 and January 1984. Her body was found on January 2nd, 1986.
I'm just double checking something very quickly before I say the last one. At some point during the years 1973 to 1993, a still unidentified woman who is estimated to be between 13 years old and 24 years old disappeared. This woman is referred to as Jane Doe B20. Her body was found on the 21st of August 2003.
Now just a bit more information on these confirmed victims. So prior to Ridgway's confession, authorities had not attributed the murders of Linda Rule, Patricia Barzak, Roberta Hayes, Martha Reeves, Patricia Yellowrobe or Jane Doe B20 to the Green River Killer, and his confession and directions also led police to discover the bodies of Pamela Avent, Marie Malvar and April Buttram. On Tuesday, December 21st, 2010, people hiking near the West Valley Highway in Auburn, Washington, came across a skull, which was quite close to where Marie Malvar's remains had been found in 2003. The skull was later identified as Becky Marrero, and the King County prosecutor confirmed that Ridgway would be charged with her murder on February 11th, 2011. On February 18th, 2011, Ridgway entered a plea of guilty, adding a 49th life sentence to his prior 48. He had previously confessed to Becky's murder, but due to insufficient evidence, it wasn't possible to prosecute him at that time. Tracy Winston's remains, minus her skull, were found in Kent's Cottonwood Grove Park in March 1986, and her skull would not be found until November 2005 near Tiger Mountain. Investigators assume it was carried here, likely by Ridgway. Sandra Major, sorry, I just want to double check I have her name right. No, I don't. My apologies. No, sorry, I do. There was two Sandras. Sandra Major was not identified until June 2012, when her family approached the King County Sheriff after seeing a movie about Ridgway, and DNA testing confirmed her identity. Wendy Stevens was previously unidentified and was listed under Jane Doe B10. Ridgway had claimed that she was a white female in her early 20s and said he thought she had brown hair. Forensic examination of the remains revealed that she was actually between 12 and 18 years old, likely closer to 15, and she was later confirmed to be 14 years old, making her the youngest of Ridgway's confirmed victims. Jane Doe B17 was discovered on January 2nd, 1986, as Josh said. As I said. Additional remains found on January 18th, 1984, so prior to this discovery, were matched to this victim. Ridgway claimed responsibility for her death, and Jane Doe B20, who Josh mentioned, was found in August 2003, but due to only partial remains being found, her face could not be reconstructed and her race could not be determined. She is estimated to have been between 13 and 24 years old, and her time of death is placed between 1970 and 1993, though it's believed that she was killed during the first decade of Ridgway's spree.
Spree is a
light word.
Yeah. Gary Ridgway is also suspected of murdering the other 6 victims that were on the original list of murders attributed to the Green River Killer. However, Ridgway was not charged with these murders, nor did he confess to them. Authorities have not found or been able to confirm their suspicion with any reliable evidence. On the 7th of July 1982, 35-year-old Amina Agashev disappeared. Her body was found on the 18th of April 1984.
Casey Ann Lee, who was born Casey Ann Woods, was 16 years old when she disappeared on August 28th, 1982, and her body has not been found.
On the 9th of June 1983, 16-year-old Tammy Lyles disappeared. Her body was found in April of 1985.
Kelly Kay McGuinness was 18 years old when she disappeared on June 28th, 1983, and her body has not been found.
In July of 1983, 16-year-old Angela Marie Gardner disappeared. Her body was found on the 22nd of April 1985.
Patricia Osborne was 19 years old when she disappeared on October 20th, 1983, and her body has not been found. Wait. No. So again, just a little bit on these few victims that we've mentioned. So Ridgway denies killing Amina Agashev, and it's considered that Amina does not fit with his victim type given her age and the fact that she wasn't a sex worker or a teenage runaway. I'm pretty sure she was a mother as well, wasn't she?
Amina.
A
mother of 3, I believe.
Yeah, no, not that the prostitutes and the other women
don't have children, of course.
Yeah. But she would have been more high risk of a victim.
Yes, compared to any of his other victims, yeah. And it's quite sad that, you know, how there's categories of like high risk of getting caught, low risk. It's very sad that there's even people that can fit the low risk category of,
and
you know.
It's the transients, the teenage runaways, the sex workers.
It's the vulnerable.
Yeah, the vulnerable people. Exactly.
Now, don't get me wrong, like obviously, you know, there's people that do sex work that are, you know, the exact same as you and me. You know, they have their friends, they have their family. Not all of them are out on their own or
out on the
but
streets.
You know,
so,
but like still, unfortunately, a lot of them.
But I suppose in the 80s there would have been a lot more of a stigma.
Yes,
around sex work,
now we're kind of at a point
things.
where now we're at a point where it's kind of like, look, you do you.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of that's the way it should be.
Yeah,
and I feel like if it was that, like, if things were that open-minded then, I don't think they would have been at as much of a risk. It's still high risk, but not
low risk.
Low risk.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's weird the way it goes.
It's
formatted in terms of like
low risk of getting caught.
Low risk of getting caught or high risk of getting caught. So during police interviews in 2003, Ridgway did confess to killing Casey Ann Lee. He said he strangled her in 1982 and left her body near a drive-in theatre on the SeaTac Strip, though law enforcement officials have not been able to find her remains in the area that he indicated. There is evidence to suggest that Ridgway killed Kelly McGuinness. Shortly before she went missing in 1983, Kelly was questioned by police, and during this time she was dating Ridgway, and this happened near the SeaTac Strip. During the summer of 2003, Ridgway gave authorities the location of several of his victims' bodies. He initially identified April Buttram's body as that of Kelly McGuinness and said he often confused the two due to their similar physiques. Ridgway is considered a suspect in the murders of Angela Gardner and Tammy Lyles, as their bodies were discovered within a mile of his known victims Shirley Sherrill and Denise Bush. Tammy wasn't identified until 1998 and Angela wasn't identified until October 2009.
2009.
But sure, there was one.
There was a 2010 as well, wasn't there?
Until 2010.
Yeah, that's awful. Gary Ridgway has also been considered a suspect in the disappearance or murders of numerous other women that were not attributed to the Green River Killer at the time. No charges have ever been filed in relation to these suspected victims. In December 1980, an unidentified black female who was possibly named Michelle disappeared and her body has still not been found.
Christy Lynn Vorak was 13 years old when she disappeared on October 31st, 1982, and her body has not been found.
On the 12th of August 1983, 15-year-old Patricia Ann LeBlanc disappeared. Her body has not been found.
Rosemary Curran was 16 years old when she disappeared on August 26th, 1987, and her body has not been found.
On the 24th of April 1990, 16-year-old Darcy Wade disappeared and her body has not been found.
Cora McGuirk was 22 years old when she disappeared on July 22nd, 1991, and her body has not been found. Now, of the victims that have been mentioned in this section, the only one that we are aware of that fits into Ridgway's victim profile is Rosemary Curran, who was known to have a drug problem and was also known as a sex worker. But I did see in my research that apparently he's recently been ruled out as a suspect. Now, take that with a pinch of salt, because the only resource that I could kind of find for that was another podcast. I can't remember the name of the podcast, but I couldn't find any resources on their site or anything to confirm or deny.
But I'm sure they probably have their resources and check that out.
And Cora McGuirk was a young mother at the time of her disappearance. She had a 4-year-old son who actually went on to become an NBA player. Now, we won't be naming him because I suppose we don't want to...
And as well, that can be easily found out if you're really that interested in finding it out, you know. And also, I suppose, as you said already earlier in the podcast, there has been bits and pieces and chunks that have been left out due to
their
just
graphic
their graphic, like they'd be okay to discuss, like that we could still do it, but it's just
we're aware that some people would be
and we didn't see
triggered.
the need because, you know, we've still covered the main facts of the case and
as well,
the plea deal and so on and so forth.
It's always important to us to be respectful of the victims, and it just, to us, it felt like by including certain aspects and certain graphic details, it would be a massive amount of disrespect to the victims and their families and their loved ones. So yeah, that's kind of why we left certain bits out.
Yeah, and like if there are more information that you want to read and you want to do that, then check out our resources. You know, the information is all there, including what we didn't put in.
We took a lot from
a file from the prosecuting office.
The prosecuting attorney's file of his compilation of evidence. There is quite a lot in that.
It's a hefty file.
Very hefty. I think it was a couple of 100 pages or something.
I think it was like 160 something or nearly 200 or something like that. It was crazy. And then there's obviously a few articles and news sites and things like that, but it's all there in the resources.
The Seattle Times.
Yeah, they were really good for yours.
They were really good for mine. I took a lot from the Seattle Times.
But yeah, so you can always check them out and give a little bit of a deeper dive. I think as well, it's just kind of, we try not to include absolutely everything, only what's important and what's necessary, unless it's going to be a multiple episode case.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So yes. We hope you found the case interesting. Respectfully, obviously.
Yeah.
And that is the Green River Killer, aka Gary Ridgway, aka Scum of the Earth, aka Cunt.
And as always, thanks for listening. We love you, and we hope that.
And if you're listening the day this comes out, we recorded it. Literally, we're finishing recording now. It's 5 to 9 in the evening. So we're going to be finished recording in a minute. So this was recorded about between 12 and 11 hours before you get the access to listen to it. So, it's almost live. And
we did the research today because to be fair, we've both had a hectic week.
Yeah. It's been wild.
There's just been no time for research this week, I feel.
But I think we did good.
We did.
I'm happy with it.
We got all the information that we needed. And
as we said, any extra you want out of things we'd said that we'd left out, it's all there in the resources, and there's more available online if you want to do your own research too. As always, if you have any suggestions for cases, now I know 99% of the time we're focused on like murder, crime, serial killers, that kind of a thing. But also, do remember, we're not against, and we do plan on in the future doing things as well, like other disasters, like just whether it's natural disasters, human-caused disasters, whether it's kind of conspiracy-style stuff. So remember, you can always send those suggestions in too. Because I also think it's kind of sometimes a little bit harder to find those ones.
Yeah.
So appreciations in those categories are always definitely appreciate it too.
And
that
as
would
well,
be a real help.
just a disclaimer, if you send in a suggestion and we don't cover that case, it's typically because there's not enough information to get a full podcast episode. But we do put those suggestions aside because we are hoping to one day have a Patreon.
And when we do mini-sodes,
we will be doing mini-sodes and things like that. So those cases will be covered.
You know, and at least when the Patreon days come, if there's ones that we feel are even a little bit too short for a mini-sode, we could wait till we have 3 or 4 suggestions of doing them all in one episode, kind of a thing. So don't worry, we will try to include all suggestions that come through, whether it's soon, whether it's at a later date when we're doing a Patreon thing. Obviously, I know if you're suggesting them and then it's Patreon, you have to pay. Sorry about it, but we have costs.
We are broke.
Yes,
okay,
we are.
Need the support.
We are broke, and I need to make sure the website's still running. Actually, on that note. It's paid for. Okay. I just need to. I just haven't checked on it in ages.
I was going to say, does something need to be relicensed? Do you need me to send you money? What's going on?
No, actually, but the theme tune is.
It's due soon.
Yeah.
Kind of August, I think.
It's either, I think it's due when you hit like
a certain amount of plays.
50, how many weeks in a year? 52?
52.
So whichever you hit first, either a year or 52 episodes basically, because 52 times of using it.
So I suppose we'll... So I suppose it'll be...
But that wasn't that expensive.
Yeah, but it's fine, I'll pay for it this time.
But yeah, so thanks for joining. For joining.
Thanks for joining.
Even.
Thanks for listening.
And listening to the little ramble. Again, apologies for my fucking giddiness at the start. I don't know where that came from.
If you made it this far, thank you, because it was chaos for a bit. But I suppose it was just us kind of getting back into it after being away from it.
I think I was just a little bit giddy to be doing the podcast again as well.
He did say as soon as we finished the research that he was like, I can't wait. I'm so excited to record again.
I was like, it feels like it's been forever.
And for those of you who aren't aware, I doubt anyone listens this far on the podcast, but for those of you who aren't aware, we also have a YouTube channel and we are hoping to start doing videos soon, so you'll get to see our beautiful faces. How lucky.
Beautiful is depending on the fucking day for me anyway.
It depends on the day of the week.
Could you imagine if we're doing the video episodes and it's one of those days where we have to roll out of bed and into the recording studio?
Oh, no, Josh, no.
I don't wear makeup, but I'll start.
Okay, I'll loan you my foundation.
Yeah.
It might be a bit light for you, but we'll make it work. We'll bronze you up.
I'll just get concealer. It's fine. Conceal, don't feel.
Don't let them know.
Until you explode.
Now they know. Let it go. Let us go.
Your makeup
we're gonna
is
go now
terrible.
because we're just babbling. We're babbling. It's the voice.
It's the voice.
If you're feeling it in your body,
then that's what it's supposed to do.
Bye.
Bye.